Why did writer Han Zhang win the Nobel Prize for Literature for The Vegetarian? Han Zhang said, "When I write, I often think about these questions: to what extent human violence can reach, how to define sanity and madness, and to what extent we can understand others. I hope The Vegetarian can answer these questions of mine." Question: in The Vegetarian, I wanted to portray a woman who refused to join the human community. These works belong to South Korea and are not just South Korea. Han Zhang believes that the body is the seat of politics, and it is difficult to remember all this. The 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature will be won by Korean writer Han Kang. She is full of significance in terms of politics, ethnicity, and gender. Such an effect is almost the proper meaning of the title of the Nobel Prize in Literature. It's surprising, but not too surprising. Korean female writer Han Kang won the Nobel Prize for Literature for her novel The Vegetarian. Surprisingly, why did the 7600 award novel win the Nobel Prize for Literature? Not surprisingly, the value of the Nobel Prize in Literature is getting lower and lower. In terms of artistic content, The Vegetarian can be regarded as a third-rate Chinese novel at best, not even a second-rate novel. But why did it win the award? But after The Vegetarian won the Nobel Prize, major platforms were full of praise and praise. But the author here wants to pour cold water on it. The quality of this novel is far from the level of the Nobel Prize, and there is no comparison with first-class domestic writers such as Yu Huo, Mo Yan, Chen Zhongxi, etc. Some people may disagree, but I will give my own opinion. First of all, it is a very cliché novel that can even be said to be vulgar. Why? The first story is that the hostess Kim Young-hae had a strange dream, and then she became unwilling to eat meat and became a vegetarian from then on. This person must not be a vegetarian all the time. After Kim Young-hae changed to a vegetarian diet, her health became worse and worse. When attending a company party, her husband hoped that Ying-hui would eat meat like a normal person and not just be vegetarian. But what about Ying-hui? At the banquet, in front of the leaders, I still only ate vegetarian food. This made her husband feel very embarrassed. After returning home, her husband exploded. The originally stable and peaceful life was shattered. In order to get Ying-hui to eat meat, her husband took her to her father-in-law and mother-in-law's house. Naturally, they treated her to good food and meat, hoping that their daughter would eat more meat. At this family gathering, Ying-hui still refused to eat meat, so she was slapped by her father. For the sake of Ying-hui's health, the whole family persuaded Ying-hui to eat meat and even forced her to eat meat. In the end, Ying-hui chose to harm herself and was rushed to the hospital. Her husband thought she was crazy, so he abandoned her and ran away. What follows is the second story. Ying-hui, who was hospitalized, attracted her brother-in-law's attention. This brother-in-law is a painter who makes no money. He has opened a photography studio with only 2 or 3 employees. But Ying-hai's sister, Jin In-hai, was particularly good at making money. She opened a store and made a lot of money, enough for the whole family to live a decent and prosperous life. In other words, this so-called painter brother-in-law is actually a parasite who eats soft food. When her brother-in-law came, Ying-hui didn't shy away. This tempted my brother-in-law to no end. But how could such an ordinary woman with a bad figure attract her brother-in-law? It is precisely this kind of ordinariness that is infinitely close to the real world. Because my brother-in-law is a painter, what he is looking for is a true artistic beauty. Then, the brother-in-law asked Ying-hui to be his own mannequin, the kind that would be painted on the body. At this time, Ying-hui was mentally disturbed and agreed in a daze. The brother-in-law didn't want his sister to know about it, so he rented another studio and asked his sister-in-law to do body painting. As he continued to draw, his brother-in-law changed. He began to become lustful and could no longer suppress it. But my brother-in-law is a sanctimonious hypocrite. At first, in order to maintain his glorious image, he hired a young employee of his studio. The brother-in-law also painted exquisite patterns on the young employee's body, and then asked the employee to make pornographic films with Ying-hui. The brother-in-law was sleazy, but the employee was not sleazy, so he immediately refused and ran away. As soon as the employee ran away, my brother-in-law took a look and realized that my sister-in-law was his best work. If not at this time when the two got together. Then, there is the third story. While the brother-in-law was having sex with his sister-in-law, Ying-hui's sister, Ren-hui, had known about it for a long time. She set up a camera outside and filmed everything. She also called the police and called the mental hospital. As a result, my brother-in-law was diagnosed as mentally normal and released. Where is Young-hae? He was mentally ill and was locked up. Although her sister got involved with her husband, as the eldest daughter in the family, Ren-hui still forgave Jin-hui. Her husband put on his pants and ran away, but In-hae went to the mental hospital to take care of her sister Jin-hae while working. But at this time, Jin-hui not only stopped eating meat, but also stopped eating vegetarian food and wanted to die. In-hae really felt sorry for her sister and sent Jin-hae to a major hospital in Seoul for treatment. But Jin-hui asked, "Why can't I die?" When the doctor inserted a gastric tube into Jin-hui and forced him to eat, Jin-hui struggled and pulled out the gastric tube, causing massive internal bleeding, and ran out of the hospital. The story ends here. Is Jin-hui dead? The author has no explanation. Is this story good? In this writer's opinion, it's not good at all. Structurally, it is exactly the same as The Mistake by the River written by Yu Hua. The Mistake by the River uses a murder case to connect a series of stories and reveal the secrets hidden by different characters. And The Vegetarian? It was a dream that broke the lives of two families and for people. Yu Hua's The Mistake by the River was published in 1987, and The Vegetarian was published in 2007, which is exactly 20 years apart. In terms of the story, a painter engages in body art and harms girls. This kind of plot is completely the plot of a Chinese online drama. For example, White Knight, Dark Man, Forensic Kinming, etc. all have similar plots. In terms of shaping conflict, contradiction, and confrontation, it is very similar to the Korean Oscar-winning movie Parasite. Parasite conveys the weak struggling to survive in despair, while Vegetarian expresses the weak struggling to die in despair. Her only shining point is feminism. The protagonist Ying Hui is an ordinary woman who couldn't be more ordinary. She just didn't want to eat meat, so she was abandoned by her husband. And because she didn't like to wear underwear and exposed her body in front of her brother-in-law, she was targeted by her brother-in-law. She was seduced step by step and fell into the abyss. Finally, Ying Hui entered a mental hospital. She didn't want to live anymore, but her sister insisted on giving her treatment. What kind of feminism is this? It happens to be the LGBT+ that is respected in Western society. I make the decision about my body. I have the right to choose not to eat meat. No one can force me to eat meat. I have the right to choose not to dress, but no man can lust after me. I have the right to choose to die. Even my closest parents and sister cannot force me to live. What kind of core is this? That is, women can choose to be men, and men can choose to be women, and have unlimited autonomy over their own bodies. For example, Musk's son turned into a daughter. It is reasonable for Biden's son to engage in prostitution and drug abuse. At the Olympics, a man can become a woman and participate in the women's boxing competition, and he can also win the championship. On the surface, Young-hae is a weak woman who is used by her husband as a nanny, her brother-in-law as a sexual art tool, and her sister controls her life and death. But what about the other way around? Because of her own selfishness, Young-hae ruined the originally harmonious family. She didn't wear clothes, her morals were degrading, and she knew she was her brother-in-law, but she still messed around. When her sister paid huge medical bills for her treatment, she chose to give up treatment. The Vegetarian is not only creating a confrontation between men and women, but also creating a confrontation between traditional housewives and feminism. In terms of artistic content, The Vegetarian is not a top-notch novel, but from a politically correct. If Trump were in charge of the White House, this book would definitely not win the Nobel Prize. What's even more exaggerated is that in 2022, The Vegetarian defeated Ferrani's Naples Quartet, Liu Cixin's The Three-Body Problem, and Yan Liangqi's 4 books to win the Booker International Literature Prize. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.